Hello and welcome to another BuildASoil YouTube FAQ video. Today we have FAQ 12 for Season 4. This is the last FAQ video for Season 4 as Season 4 is completely wrapped up and we're about to start recording the kickoff for Season 5, which I'm really looking forward to. Per usual, I have a piece of paper here. Dean sent it in. He selected the questions from the YouTube videos from all of you. And then he sent it in, someone brought it to my desk, and I've not even looked at it yet. So I'm gonna flip it, jump in live, and we'll see how I do. So let's see, FAQ 12, Season 4, final thoughts. All right, Ken has the first question on here. Thoughts on the Ecowitt after this season? What is the lowest moisture percentage reading on the Ecowitt that you would water at? Oh, this is really good. I need to do a little more learning. In fact, for Season 5, we're gonna be pairing two different moisture meters together to get some readings. And what I mean by that is, the Ecowitt, which I'm gonna answer your question, it does like percentage depletion of the moisture, where tensiometers, like the Blue Mat version, reads the tension on the moisture and how hard it is to pull from the soil material. That's at least loosely how I understand the tension versus the percentage of moisture. And so that tensiometer, the reason why it's a little different is if we use the percentage and we use the tensiometer, we should be able to graph those and come up with an intersection point that says, wow, based on this soil that has maybe more compost or has more drainage or more sand, you're gonna be targeting an ideal moisture right here, right where they intersect. And so I'm gonna be learning some of this as we go. I'm gonna be working with the Blue Mat guys as well as doing more research so that I can convey this easily to you. But for Season 5, we're gonna be getting both readings so that we can determine, hey, for this particular soil recipe, this is our target. And so without all of that science, I just wanted to share with you how I've found the Ecowitt to be helpful. First off, I thought maybe these won't be accurate and they won't work well. They seem to be really, really good. But the problem is if you don't know where to begin or where ideal levels are, then it might be harder to document. And our whole goal was to increase the ability for us to communicate across the phone or through email when we have a customer that says, I'm not sure what's wrong. And a lot of times in living soil, it comes back to the fact that maybe it was overwatered for a while, or potentially it was underwatered, it was recovered, and maybe overcorrected. So getting that down right and having those conversations accurately is very important. And with the Ecowitt, on the BuildASoil website under Ecowitt, I've set the parameters that I was looking to target. And it seems like the beds, earth boxes are gonna be slightly different. They're a little more moist, but ideal moisture is between 35 and 42%, somewhere in that range. On the beds, I was really happy at the depth that the Ecowitt goes, keeping it around 35%. And what would happen is when I'd water, it might go up to 40, and then quickly after settle into like 36, 37. And then over the next day, as the plants drink and are stretching, it might dip down to that 26, 27, 28 number, and I could water to bring it back up. But having the Ecowitt for the first time, it allowed me to say, you know what? It's getting towards the evening, and I didn't water today, and we're holding 28%. Instead of me giving them water when they go to bed, I'm confident that 28 is good enough on my reading. I'm gonna wait till the morning and see what it looks like. And there's a couple times I pushed it a little bit lower just to see if I got wilt, and I went down closer to 20%, and I did not get wilt, partially because we have a deep bed and I'm only getting the top reading. So one of the ideas this season was to maybe poke a hole in our bed and get another Ecowitt plugged through the side, or make an extension to the Ecowitt via some PVC or something, right? I'm not positive it even be doable. But I'd like to get some dual readings deeper and taller and share that information with you. But for now, it seems like that 20 to 40% is kind of the ideal range based on what I see. I'm trying to target 35, and then during stretch, where I know they're drinking a lot, I may not get it quite as low. But when they're finishing, I might actually allow it to go slightly lower because I know they're not rushing through the water. That way I'm not keeping it topped off too much. And that's part of what people call crop steering, trying to develop some of these results based on moisture. And there's a lot of thoughts and opinions on it. So I just want to share what we're doing and what's been working. And for your question, Ken, the lowest moisture percentage reading on the Ecowitt you would water at is I prefer it to not go below 25, and I bring it back up from there. And that's worked really well based on what I was documenting as my natural tendency to water how I would without knowing what the Ecowitt was gonna say. It seems like I'd go from 25 to like 38, 26 to 38, 28 to 38, and it would kind of hover around 34, 35 throughout most of the day until the next day. And then sometimes it might be a few days, right? If it's not really growing really quickly, but those are the parameters that I stayed in. All right, long answer, simple question. I just wanted to share with you that we're still learning about this and that we do have more information coming for season 5. So look forward to that. Okay, next question. Jordan says, you think the Yahweh Thrive that you used in the Autopod had something to do with the terp profile on the Soleil Levant? No. I think that it couldn't have hurt, right? I obviously think that the Thrive Yahweh is a great product. And one of the things that I notice is that when we impart all of these different things that grow into a healthy plant, we usually get really good terpene profile. But one of the other things is a little bit of stress. And so I feel like those plants were slightly stressed out and may have increased the terpene level just a little bit, but I want to do better. And I think that I'm going to prove that to myself this time by growing Soleil Levant again for season 5. I don't have the keeper that I wanted, but all of them smelt really good. And so I'm going to make sure that I pop more seeds, keep keepers this time, and it won't be in an auto pot setup this time. So it'll give me a little more understanding. Was it louder than last time? Was it the same? Was it not as loud? And I'll be able to translate that thought when we get to the end of season 5. However, my gut tells me that those genetics were purely responsible for that. Knowing what's in it, who the breeder was, it makes sense that they were just loud. It's like, I like them all. I think season 4 was really good genetics in there across the board. Like every jar I like. But I really keep going back to that purple pheno of the Rootwise because it tastes so good. I think that if I looked through a couple packs, I could really find some heat in those. I love the Fruit by the Funk, and I'm continually smoking it, and we have a keeper that we're going to run again for season 5. But I kind of like the halitosis a little more as far as that fuel side of it. So I kind of wish that I was running the halitosis, but I don't have that mom anymore, although it's swimming around. I hear that Dave from Oddkid is making something from an employee that took the cutting from the halitosis, and that, anyways, it will survive. And I will mention the autoflowers, although I didn't do the best job on them. That herb's pretty good too. I'm really enjoying it. Not as much on the mango one. I do like the fuely one. I think that's just personal preference, but we'll see. I will have an answer for you, Jordan, as far as whether it was straight up the Yahweh. I did use Yahweh on other parts, but of course the autopots had the most. And so I want to avoid doing that this time in the sense that I really want to keep the autopots pure. And I promise to do a better job, especially in the XXL. I think it's going to make it a lot more the BuildASoil way. Okay, I got to keep going. I'm never going to answer all these questions. All right, Will. Will says, would it be rude to want to see a head-to-head of the BuildASoil versus a big box store bag mix? I know BAS would kill it, but it may be informative on extra challenges one would face. This is a really good idea. I've wanted to do it, but I've always wanted to just focus on what we're doing instead of what other people are doing. And what I mean by that is I do sense that there's like some backlash from a small company like us saying, hey, Fox Farm, Roots Organics, you guys suck and we're gonna beat you. So I think that if we just did a very fair comparison, it would be easy to have that without the politics involved, because what I would wanna show is just the average experience one might get when they go buy one of these random large brands. There is, if you wanna go on YouTube and look up hemp wars, during maybe it was hemp soil wars, I think is what it is. But when hemp was really popular, we had a grower outdoor get a bag of soil from many different suppliers, including all the way to ProMix, Super Soils, Our Soil, other brands. And we weren't included in it in the beginning, but someone said, yo, BuildASoil should be in this soil wars if you're gonna do one. And so they reached out and we literally went to a pallet in our store, grabbed a couple bags of the recipes, Light and 3.0, and sent it to them. And I told him Light is gonna come out the gate crushing because it's so balanced. 3.0 is gonna hang out and it's gonna explode when you get to flower. And he had those exact results, and BuildASoil 3.0 and Light took first and second place out of I think like 10, 12, 15 different soil recipes. And it made us feel really proud of what we're doing, and it was good content. So I would totally consider doing that in a season. I just think that I'd wanna structure it in a way where we have enough going on that it was fair. And what I mean by that is, when we do a side-by-side with a couple zones, it's not exactly like we're taking 1,000 plants and putting the scientific method against it. So I would just be very fair in communicating what I see in those differences. But I've wanted to do it. When I first started BuildASoil, I would buy all the brands and I'd put them in pots and I'd grow tomatoes and weed and everything. I just wanted to make sure that what we were making was holding up to what the standard on the market was. Once I started to understand the ingredients, the soil testing, and everything that we're about, I didn't have to make those direct comparisons anymore. But I think that if you're brand new, it would be very helpful to see that. So it's a really good question. I will consider it. I'd like to hear feedback from all of you on this FAQ if you're listening. Do you think we should do a head-to-head with big brands? Or do you think that that's like talking shit, so to speak? Like whether we win or lose, I try not to make direct comparisons to brands. I've talked about subjects, but I think it would be really good. Right? I'm all about the info. Okay, next question. Buckeye. How about maintaining living soil between harvest and the next grow? I don't want to lose my worms, microbes, nematodes. Next grow is 3 to 4 months away. For sure cover crop, but is there more to it? Thanks for all you do. This is a really good question. Part of why we like larger soil containers is if there's ever downtime, you don't really have to do anything, especially if they're in the grow tent. I literally shut the lights down and just leave it. And I've got an Ecowitt moisture meter in my 3x3 bed, and I've actually held off on watering it, even though I would want to keep it, nice and moist, because I want to lift it and move it so I can grow autoflowers in a 4x4 tent for part of season 5. And to move it, it's easier when it's light. But what's great is I know in a big bed, there's still moisture down in the middle, and those worms will be there and everything will be great. And I really do like having that little bit of downtime, kind of like summer to winter, some transitionary time. You could certainly grow some cover crop, and then when it gets a little bit tall, not too tall, right? Maybe 2 to 6 inches, you can chop and drop that, break it all down. That'll feed the worms. But I wouldn't overthink this. So unless you're gonna go put it outside where it's like baking in the sun, getting rained on and leached out, everything's gonna be good. In 3 to 4 months time, if you're in a little container, my main fear was that it goes 100% bone dry. And so I would at least add some moisture. If you want to keep it alive, then you can keep the lights on. You could grow some food out of there. You can grow some lettuce. You can grow some cover crop, chop and drop it. Basically, at that point, you're just maintaining it. Nothing special to do other than to make sure it doesn't go completely bone dry, because then you'd lose your worms. And you don't want it to go completely moist without growing anything in it, because it'll turn anaerobic and turn to mud. Those are the two extremes. Avoid that. Totally good. A lot of people might consider doing like a soil test at that point, because they're gonna have some downtime. Send it in, get the once a year, once every 2 year kind of soil test. And I'd like to do a more detailed video for BuildASoil on how to use like the Intelligent Gardener, the Ideal Soil, those books, and literally do the math by hand. Maybe I could do it on a whiteboard. We'll do line by line. And then I'll show you how we have our free soil test calculator spreadsheet that we designed through Excel. And it's available at buildasoil.com. And you can actually plug in your soil test in there and spit out some numbers and see what it might have you add. And that's really fun to do. So that might be a good idea when you have downtime. Otherwise, don't overthink it. You're just trying to keep it, like I said, for 3 months, you can just shut it down, especially in a big bed. But I would be focusing on not letting it bone dry, okay? All right, David, have you thought about doing any CBD strains? I just ran a red Pure Auto CBD and a pink Kush Auto CBD, and they're the first 2 CBD strains I've run that can stand next to the beautiful THC strains these days. Love to see what you could do with CBD. Thanks for what you do. I've definitely done this before, and I did it before it was popular, in the sense that a lot of us thought maybe the Holy Grail was some of these CBD with THC, and maybe that was gonna get you more high, like more fuzzy feeling, more happy than anything. And I found that not to be true. I found out that I do like high THC. I love to have some variety in there, and I do not go off potency. I could care less. I go off of taste, I go off of looks, the smell, the aroma, all those things, but I want it to be potent. If it's not potent at all, even if it tastes good, yeah, if it tastes really good, I might keep it around, but I feel like that you gotta have potency at some level, and you wanna have the taste and the flavor. But when it comes to CBD, I personally do not like CBD. I don't feel like it has as many benefits as people had kind of led on with the whole hemp craze. And so I feel like a lot of these old school genetics that have some CBD in them, totally happy with those, I would grow those. But I do not seek out full CBD strains to grow. I have been sent a couple of really cool genetics that are CBD, likely to have high CBD, would fully consider growing them. And from what I've grown and seen, unbelievably beautiful frosty plants can come from really well bred CBD genetics. But I just end up having herb that I don't smoke because it has no potency. And if I'm going to modulate my endocannabinoid system by adding CBD at certain times, I actually do that through edibles. There's a local company here that I really like, Let It Grow Hemp, and they make a 10 milligram THC that's like 0.3 by weight, so it follows through the loophole. But it's got a good amount of CBD in it. I've also got from Tu, the seed company, he sends us CBD. We've got the little droppers. And so for some reason, I'm feeling like I need those benefits, or if I'm just trying to balance out what I'm smoking, I'll take it that way. But I've not really been into growing CBD flowers, even though they can totally be beautiful. Those are my personal reasons. So now I may at some point do something that has CBD in it, so we can have some of those discussions. I've also wanted to document how to make your own FICO, full extract cannabis oil, for treating illnesses. And I feel like having some variety is good. But even from those people that are fighting cancer, I've heard that focusing on high THC is better than focusing on high CBD. And so while there was a period of time I was really curious about learning more, I feel like there's other substances within this plant that are probably equally as important. And so there's people making CBN, which is good for sleep for people that don't want to get high. There's also THCV. There's a lot of these different compounds that I think we'll continue to learn about, but I just love the entourage effect of a good balanced high THC herb with some other subtleties in there. That's what I look for. Okay, good question, David. Glad you asked that. All right, Dustin says, hey, Jeremy, love the content as always. Thank you, I appreciate that. Question for the next round. What's your experience or strategy with a major thrip infestation? I can't say it's affecting my flowers any, but definitely chewing up the fans pretty bad. I'm not sure that this will matter in my yield. I'm kind of wondering if the increased pest pressure is going to increase resin and terps as a defense. Is it worth treating at all? Or is it possibly improving my final potency and flavor? Thanks. So when we talk about stress, I feel like having a small amount of pest pressure might be acceptable, but I prefer not to go that route for my stress. I would rather just have everything ideal. And I feel like I get really good results that way. And so a little bit of pest pressure, I don't think is gonna create the type of stress that we want. Like even if it did work, I wouldn't wanna go put thrips in there on purpose. And so that's just what I'm gonna stick to. Now, there's other things that you can do to elicit these things. Like we've talked about the use of chitin in the past. We talked about how certain things elicit response from plants. And there's a report for tobacco you can read about sage. And we have mountain sage out here. Like when I go disc golfing, it's everywhere. And when that sage is eaten or stomped, it releases some jasminic acid. And that sends a communication signal that increases the trichome response on plants. But a lot of us, a lot of hash makers and a lot of growers that have gone through trying these different products out have responded uniquely saying that they think that these elicitors start to make one terpene more dominant or reduce some of that naturalness that creates the diversity in this terpene expression. So that's going off on a tangent. But what I will say is, let's just talk about the thrip. When I was on the forums back in the day, Clackamas Coot told us that, neem oil, all these different things, they work great. But when it comes to like the organic nuclear bomb, so to speak, the safe product that he felt was safe, that really handled a lot, like mites and thrips, was a spinosad product. And so Captain Jack's Dead Bug is a popular one. There's other brands that use spinosad. And unfortunately, spinosad's been given a bad name because when it comes to outdoor growers and caterpillars, they'll spray it on full flowering buds. And then it is tested and it shows in the herb. And so it's been removed from the list of products that you can use on licensed cannabis grows. But I feel like because it's a bacteria and you can research it, it's totally safe if used properly. And so what I would do is I would treat the soil by adding the spinosad to my watering can. I would treat the soil by watering the top inch of soil where the larva might be, or sorry, where the juvenile thrip might be, as well as spraying the plant down really well, and you should be completely eradicated after that. If it's in flower, I would focus on defoliating the problem leaves using EM5 or soap or anything totally natural that would be more cleaning the plant instead of trying to kill. And you should keep the numbers really, really down by making it inhospitable for them to be there. And then by the time you get to next season or next round, you can treat using the spinosad, the soil, and the vegetative plants to make sure that the thrip are 100% gone. In the absence of spinosad, I would use the BuildASoil method of using 2 to 3 organic products that I like and rotating them hard. And so what that would look like to me is like EM5 one day, Tweet Mint the next day, maybe a neem oil emulsified with some Kuyaha or Agsil the next day, and then go back to the beginning and rotate again. Another product that I personally don't use, but I've heard nothing but good things from people that have had major problems. Maybe they like to source special clones, and so they have their own kind of super methods if they notice a problem or for prevention, and that's a wettable sulfur. Typically, if you buy a pesticide labeled wettable sulfur, you can get really good results with it, but you don't want to alternate oil products. And since you don't want to alternate it, since I only grow from seed and never really have these issues or seem not to, I'm able to just stick with the basic rudimentary, and I never have to really level up. But I will say the spinosad is one of my go-to favorites if I notice a thrip problem, and I believe that it's safe. You do your own research, but spinosad's a bacteria, and it follows the BuildASoil way of using biology to control issues as opposed to trying to use poison. So, really good question. Next question is from Rick. Can you have too many worms in a 10-gallon pot? I'll stop you right there and say yes. I feel like in nature, no matter what, things can be out of balance, and so we can have too much of a good thing. I will say that it may not be like completely detrimental. You could probably still have a run with too many worms, but the idea is to add a small amount of worms, let them come to like homeostasis on their own as far as what balance is created from those worms. But if we end up in between rounds feeding it like a worm bin, keeping it moist and the worms multiply, it could be too much. And at that point, growers will dump them out and spread the worms around, start a worm bin with it, and then kind of start the process over again. And so those are some considerations. My worms have eaten all the reamendments I did in my off-cycle pots. Started with 50 in each bag, and 2 months later, took out 75 from each. Another 2 months, and today I could easily remove another 50 and still have worms. So long story short, how many is too many? Good questions, and it looks like it did come from your off-cycle pots where you are working, feeding the worms, so to speak, so they will multiply. I typically just avoid doing that in the sense that I let a little bit of dry down occur, and then I kind of ramp them back up to life when my off-cycle pot is ready. Now, I don't let it go totally dry. This controls the worm population, and then by the time I get to starting off again, once I reapply the moisture and the top dressing, what worms were in there start to come to the top and interact. And then they're feeding the plant, and the whole process of supporting each other comes back in play. Like, I will say that it's not like I'm perfect at this, but it seems like by doing that methodology where I'm not treating it like a worm bin in between rounds, I'm able to keep the populations where they're just ideal at all times. And I start by not adding too many to begin. 15 to 10 gallons, probably not too many, but maybe 5 or 10 would have been enough, and they'd multiply up to their proper amount instead of ramping up so quickly. Something to consider. You know, I know people that grow with tons of worms in there and still get really good results. So focus on what you're seeing as far as the health of the plant. But if your gut is telling you, man, this is straight pure worm castings, you might want to dump it out and then make more soil from that by treating those as worm castings, adding some more pumice, maybe a little more peat, some amendments, starting back over again. And I can't answer that for you, but I just wanted to share you kind of the parameters that I see so that you don't overdo it completely. Okay, last question on here, Mendez. Jeremy, what about Grove bags? Test it out sometime, please. Likes from Brazil. I just like jars. I did grab some Grove bags at some point from a vendor when I was at a booth somewhere, and I used them, but like, I don't like things that create this window of opportunity where you're like, I can put it in there slightly too moist or slightly too dry and it'll optimize it. I feel like I just want to get it right, put it in a jar and lock it away. But I know people that freaking love the Grove bags and swear by them. They're plastic bags, so for whatever reason, I just avoid it. I know you can reuse them. So I will leave you with this. I will try them so that I can give you my proper feedback instead of me just kind of looking at it, throwing a nug in it, like gifts from other people at the event. I would put in that bag and I'd sealed it up. The idea makes a lot of sense to me. In the past, we even carried the little moisture packs, the desiccant moisture packs that you would add into the jar, like Boveda packs and other brands. I ended up not liking those either. I just want to have it dried properly, put in the jar, and that's it. And that seems to be what I'm sticking to. But I will research the Grove bags a little more. Maybe I'll grab a couple and see if I like them, especially because anybody that's watching us, if they feel like it adds value to their life, I don't want to become so stuck in my ways that I never pick up any of the new ideas. So I will definitely research it, but the old school in me just likes either a big turkey bag for bulk storage if I don't have enough jars, or actually using jars. And so maybe what I could do is replace like a turkey bag instead with a Grove bag so that the bulk storage is better. And when I transfer to jars, still do my jar thing. But I will look into it. Good question, Mendez. Thanks for everybody who contributed here for the questions for these FAQs throughout the whole season. We plan on doing a lot more of these for season 5, and it wouldn't be the same without this interaction that we get to have together. It helps me understand what's best to answer, what people may not know. And it's also easy to record these episodes. You know, we've got a lot going on running the business, and when I can just do an FAQ video and create some valuable content that'll live on for years beyond this so people can reference it, it helps our staff too. Because now each one of our staff, they might grow different ways. And as we grow, I don't want to have a grower that doesn't have an answer to a question, ever try and make it up. I'd rather them reference a YouTube video or reference something that I've done so we can be sure that it's really the BuildASoil way. And then we can improve these as we go. So thank you so much for participating. If this is your first time here, click the like button, subscribe to the channel. It really helps. A lot of our videos are age restricted. And so if you subscribe, it'll actually send you the notification, and it seems to work the algorithm better for us. So hit the thumbs up, like it, subscribe to it, tell your friends about it, and of course, ask more questions. Every time we post a video, when you put questions in there, in the YouTube backend, we're able to load up all the questions, and that's how Dean can kind of cherry pick all the questions for these FAQ videos. And since it's not me choosing, it's someone else, we're a lot more likely to get questions that maybe I wouldn't have thought to answer. And it kind of puts me on the spot, and I think it makes it a little more fun. So thank you as always. And until next time, I'll see you guys on the next FAQ video.